These are the faces of the NBA, pillars of the NBA. And you mean to tell me LeBron James is not an all-star starter? The Toronto Raptors would not be winning if it wasn't for the buckets that Brandon Ingram provided. They finally got their go-to scorer and are in the playoffs. And you mean to tell me they should only have one all-star? This dude is an all-star. It screams all-star. If he doesn't get in, it's literally going to be because of somebody else, whatever the NBA decides. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip-hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip-hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast. It's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip-hop, you've come to the right place. They play my kind of basketball. A lot of layers to this song if you're really paying attention. Here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Welcome to a new episode of Hip to the Games. Whether you are new to the H2DG family or a day one supporter, I appreciate you listening or watching today's show. All praise to the creative director, Jesus Christ, as it's always a blessing to get in front of this microphone and share what he's put in my heart with you. And a special shout out to the home team, 19 Media Group, for the opportunity to represent a network filled with passionate, independent podcasters. With NBA All-Star voting coming to a close, I figured I'd once again share my selections for this year's Sunday Showcase. Notice I said that these are my selections, not predictions. I will be sharing how the All-Star teams would look if it was up to me. The fun part about this, of course, is that nowadays it's been extremely difficult to make selections due to the amount of talent that's in the league now. But nonetheless, I'm going to share my rosters just for the fun of it. And actually, this comes at perfect timing as the All-Star starters were announced yesterday. So I will be comparing my picks to what actually ended up happening and then share my picks for the reserves for each conference. Now, last year I started with the Western Conference. So this year we'll start with the East. And as we know, the change to this year's format is that it will be a USA versus World format. So despite selecting representatives from both the East and Western conferences, there still has to be enough World candidates to fill out the roster of 8 World players in the 3-team tournament. And I think a lot of people slept on this detail. In the event that the voting and selection process falls short of 8 World players, Adam Silver actually gets to decide who fills that last spot. So once I reveal my snubs for each conference, I actually want to share the one player from each conference that I believe could potentially become an all-star this year by the grace of Adam Silver. So keep that in mind as we get to those parts of the show. But once again, while I've seen a lot of mixed opinions, I do believe the Eastern Conference starters were a lot, or really the entire team as a whole, was a lot easier to select compared to the West. Now, my East starters actually checked out as what ended up being the official starters announced yesterday. Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, Cade Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think it was clear as day that these 5 players were the best 5 out of the Eastern Conference. I mean, if I want to start up top with Jalen Brunson, we know that he is the engine of the New York Knicks, still doing his thing, averaging 28 points a game, 6-7 assists, clutch as heck, great player. Great score. The reason why the Knicks were in that, top 3 conversation is because of Jalen Brunson. They have a lot of great pieces, but their engine is Jalen Brunson. And he's been balling this year, continuing to play, peak basketball in his career. So that to me was a no-brainer. The next name is Tyrese Maxey, who I'm actually happy has returned to the All-Star game after missing out last year. The Sixers weren't that good last year, and he had a good year, but again, it's hard to develop that all-star campaign when your team is underperforming as the Sixers were last year. So now that the Sixers are in the playoff conversation and Tyrese Maxey he's eclipsed the 30-point per game scoring mark, he's really looking as electrifying as ever. So he's made a great surge back to this game. And, the one thing that's funny about Tyrese Maxey that I'll say is that he's an excellent player, but it's so scary to think about where he is, even though he's averaging like 30 points and 7 assists. Like when you watch Tyrese Maxey, I still don't necessarily see him as a point guard per se, right? Like he's such an electrifying scorer. I notice a lot of times when he is kind of doing some of the point guard duties, like managing the offense, managing the game plan, it's usually for him to score or, usually a pick and roll with Joel Embiid or pick and pop with Joel Embiid. So I think it's actually scary that Tyrese Maxey still has a lot of room to grow, and I think we feel that way a lot about the young guys in the league, but Tyrese Maxey especially, he is having a fantastic year. I love how his mid-range game has really opened up his arsenal this year. And I think that's really the big reason why he's been able to average 30 points and lead the Sixers to victories. Like I said, there are some moments where I think the next step for him is going to be learning how to manipulate the game and get his teammates involved and not just manipulating the game that in a way that helps him score. But nonetheless, again, I don't say that to be hating or anything like that. Absolutely love Tyrese Maxey returning to the All-Star game this year, and especially as a starter, he made a great leap. Another great leap, Jaylen Brown, man. Jaylen Brown. Now, he's been, if I'm correct, he's been a all-star starter before. But again, in this season, not having Jason Tatum next to him, averaging 30 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, things of that nature, leading the Boston Celtics to victories and crazy shot making to go with it. And again, for Boston to be in that top half of the Eastern Conference when a lot of people expected them to have a gap year this year, Jaylen Brown is the hugest. That's not even a word. He is the biggest part of the Boston Celtics success this year. That's how crazy it is that I had to make up a word, right? But yeah, Jaylen Brown has been absolutely incredible. I love this for him. Like I said in my previous episode, didn't think he would go about this season that way, but he has. And here he is with a well-deserved all-star starter appearance. Next guy, Cade Cunningham, man. Cade Cunningham. You got to put a Cade Cunningham in there with the Pistons being at the top of the Eastern Conference for most of the year. I mean, what he's doing this year is very similar to what he's done last year. And even when you watch Cade sometimes, even the last few games, Cade isn't always 20 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. Like sometimes it's a kind of ugly 14, but he just managed the game so well, his team was able to win. He's a big guard, goes at it on both ends, and a very impressive shot creator. Again, it's funny when shout out to the OG Michael Redd, when he compared him to Brandon Roy at first, there were so many people like me who were like, man, he's nothing like Brandon Roy. But I think when you actually watch Cade Cunningham, it's the pace, it's the poise that he plays with and the discipline that he plays with that reminds you of a Brandon Roy. It's somebody who never feels rushed. I mean, when I watch Cade Cunningham play, I'm just amazed at how he's never rushed. He plays at his own pace. Even when he's having bad games, it's not like he's forcing the issue. I think a lot of it is just, again, facing tough defenses and being the main guy on his team. He gets a lot of traps. He gets a lot of pressure. So, they want to get the ball out of his hands and force those turnovers and whatnot. But, even as I say that, right, that's something that he's improved over the last couple of years, taking care of the basketball, making the right pass. He's hit some big shots in the clutch this year for his team. And even in some of those games they lost, but he just willed his team to the end, man. And he's been an amazing leader for this team. Again, he's like 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And this dude has like the poise of a 30-year-old, like he's really got that team locked in this year. And I knew it was a no-brainer that he was going to be an all-star starter this year. And again, the thing we have to point out is how positionless it is, right? This is the very first year, to my knowledge, of all-star history that the voting process was entirely positionless, right? So I knew that, okay, you pretty much have to put the 5 best guards and wings from the East, and then it's going to be this last guy, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? And even Giannis, who's going through the injury a little bit, he missed some time. I mean, he's, the Bucks not in the greatest position in the Eastern Conference, but that don't stop the Giannis train, man. Giannis is doing his thing, doing the things that we all know he can do, flirting with 30 points every night, double doubles, 10, 11, 12 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists. getting some nice blocks, getting some steals, not necessarily showing in the averages, but in those big games, he can get a big block. He can get a nice steal. Fast break is where he lives. Transition is where he does a lot of damage. We know the dominant force that Giannis is, man. This is nothing new. So yeah, I thought the Eastern Conference was pretty much set, and I wasn't really surprised that that's what ended up taking shape as they released the All-Star starters yesterday. So those are the East starters. Not a lot to say there. Like I said, I've said my piece. Me and the NBA, we were on one accord. But it's the West that I got some things to say about. All right, because I was so close to going 10 for 10 of All-Star starters. And then it was just the last guy, man. All right, so we're going to start with the guards, right? You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, and then the big Nikola Jokic. All right, so that's everything that I had that was aligned with the NBA. I mean, you look at what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is doing with the OKC Thunder. Much what I said about Jalen Brunson is the same applies to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the OKC Thunder. 30 points a night, wills his team to victory. We know what he does from mid-range, inside. He's really improved his step back three this year. Like, he's just a 3-level threat. Gets after it on defense when he's really engaged. Again, when he's taking such responsibility on the offensive side, his defense doesn't always make the highlights that J-Dub's defense does, or Lou Dort's defense does, or Cason Wallace's defense does, or Alex Caruso's defense does, or even Chet Holmgren in the interior, right? But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a two-way player. He may not be the best two-way player in the league, but he is a two-way player, and a lot of his impact comes on the offensive side, but he is no slouch on the other end either. And again, I think his dominance is just so evident this year. Again, especially that first half. It's been the OKC Thunder have been met with a lot of critique because their first half of the schedule was so easy compared to other teams in the league. But hey, man, they took care of business, and they not only beat teams, they destroyed teams. And again, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the head of the snake. No surprises here. The next spot, Stephen Curry. The funny thing about Stephen Curry is correct me if I'm wrong, the last couple seasons now, he's kind of been in and out of the starters. He'll come off the bench one year, be a starter the next year, again, because of guys like Shai, Luka emerging. But it's really good to see Steph in the starting lineup this year. I think it's well deserved. 28. He's pretty much been flirting with 28, 4-4 averages all year. It's funny. I was talking to Devon the other day, and we always like to compare like Stephen Curry, because it's like he has different seasons. It's always funny that like there are some years he leads his team in assists, and then he'll have a year like this where he's averaging under 5 a game. And I think like this year he's been a lot more reminiscent of his time in Davidson, where he's not asked to be the primary ball handler and facilitator. Obviously, we knew that, right? As long as he's been with Draymond Green, that's pretty much been the case. But when you look at guys on that team like Pajemski or Jimmy Butler even, right? And then I think the biggest piece and most underrated, DeAnthony Melton. I've said this the last few years, ever since Andre Iguodala retired / left the Golden State Warriors, they have been looking for a player that fits that mold ever since. They did it with Dante DiVincenzo that short time, and they did it with DeAnthony Melton. And I think, again, I say, that is exactly why when he went down last season, I thought that was the biggest killer of what the Warriors were trying to build. Not Steph, not anything with that, not even the Jimmy trade. I really thought that DeAnthony Melton was supposed to, in a roundabout way, fill that Iguodala role off the bench and be somebody that can guard 94 feet, get in the passing lanes, make the right cuts offensively, and he's a better three-point shooter than Andre Iguodala. So he fits the Golden State Warriors perfectly. Somebody that can handle the ball. This is what he did in Memphis a few years ago, right? Like, that's why he was such a vital piece to the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think I say all that to say, having all of these initiators and selfless players on the Warriors allows the offense to run through Stephen Curry the way that it's supposed to, right? With all those off-ball screens and off-ball actions, a lot of the Warriors' offense is about setting up Stephen Curry, not necessarily Stephen Curry setting up everybody else. And so we see that this year. I think that's why he's had the increase in points per game and the decrease in assists, because a lot of it has been him being the focal point. And again, even though he's getting older, Steph Curry with the shot, man. It never fails. It never fails. He's still among the best from 3-point land. Still exciting as heck to watch. Absolutely well deserved. Next guy, Luka Doncic, likely the scoring champion this year. This dude from the jump was on a tear. First full season with the Lakers. LeBron missed a lot of time to start the season, so a lot of it was on Luka's shoulders and Austin Reeves. Shout out Austin Reeves, but Luka did what he always does, man. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Flirting with that triple double kind of line every night. Absolute goon offensively. I mean, like, come on, am I saying things that we don't know? I mean, but in all seriousness, Luka being able to lead the Lakers the way that he has it's been good to see. I've still had moments here and there where I'm just like, man, he's really a Laker. You still have that feeling sometimes, but when I watch the Lakers play, I really hope it works out because I know the standard that they set for themselves as an organization, and to be blessed with a guy like Luka Doncic in the prime of his career, you want to take full advantage of that. And Luka is certainly going out there night in and night out and giving his best. And I know even that is a little controversial, right? The whole defense thing and whatnot. But on the surface, right, knowing what he can do offensively, how he can carry teams to wins and facilitate with the best of them. This is a guy that you're just more than happy to see at the head of your team as LeBron James heads out. So again, he's doing his thing, putting the team on his back. The Lakers are actually, despite their defensive woes and their role player woes, they have been a decent team out west. And for, I know they've had their ups and downs, and obviously Austin Reeves out with injury, but when they were really rolling, man, they were top 3 in the East or in the West, excuse me, if I'm not mistaken. So, the Lakers, for them to have a bad defense and still do that just shows the impact that Luka and Austin Reeves and LeBron and these guys have. But of course, Luka is that main guy, and again, he's a staple here when it comes to the starting lineup for the All-Star game. And then Nikola Jokic. I knew that he was going to make it despite him suffering from the hyperextended left knee. I think we all knew that he was going to make it. He's averaging a triple-double again this year. Absolutely going crazy. Almost right under 30 points a game. 12 rebounds, I think it was, 10 assists. Like, Joker is insane. He is arguably the best basketball player on the planet. And honestly, I think I agree with that statement. Love Shea. I think Shea did not get the respect that champions get when he won, which half of that I think was just because the way that Tyrese Halliburton went down. But I really was disappointed to see that it didn't seem like fans kept the same energy, right? Like how Giannis said when he won, the best player is the player that won the championship, period. And I know that's very an old school way of thinking. And you know me, I am an old soul. I am a traditionalist, so I tend to navigate towards those tropes and storylines and theories and whatnot. But I thought Shea didn't get enough love for that. But I do think Nikola Jokic is certainly the best basketball player on the planet as of today. What he does, the way he manages a game, the way he facilitates for his teammates, makes it look easy. He's a point guard out there. They really have 2 point guards out there with him and Jamal Murray. And he just makes it all look easy, man. I mean, from the block, from the nail, from beyond the arc, like he's the total package. He's got the footwork, he's got the post game. He's able, if you double, it's trouble because somebody's going to cut to the basket or somebody's going to be open for 3. He's just going to whip a skip pass to the corner. Like, this dude is incredible. He's one of the most fascinating players I've ever seen with my own eyes. And even with the injury, that brother is an all-star starter. But here is where it gets interesting. All right. The NBA actually chose Victor Wembanyama to fill the final all-star starter spot. And on my ballot, I gave it to LeBron James. And this is the thing that's interesting about this. Number one, I just mentioned that I am a traditionalist and I'm an old soul. And one thing about me, and especially when it comes to the NBA has always done a great job paying homage to its predecessors and its legends of the game. I can't speak for anybody else, but as far as me and my childhood, that's what it was, right? In 2003, you had Vince Carter give up his starting spot for Michael Jordan, right? And again, because all the players had such reverence for him. Like, absolutely, did Vince Carter deserve that starting spot over Michael Jordan? Yeah, even 38, 39-year-old Michael Jordan, averaging 25-5, doing his thing with the Wizards. You would have liked to see him start, but it made sense that Vince earned the votes and everything like that as the young star in the league. But of course, the players banded together and said, like, look, man, we're not going to do that. Mike is starting, right? Like, and I thought you were going to see a similar thing this year. And I can't lie, I was disappointed to see that the coaches and the media didn't come together and put on for Bron like that, especially if he plans on retiring and just bowing out like Tim Duncan, right? If this is indeed his last season, you're going to regret not honoring him in that way, just in case, right? All-Star game in LA, right? Even though it's the Clippers hosting it, it is in LA, Laker town. Like, it's just meant to be. But when you also look at it statistically, right? Obviously, LeBron missed a chunk of the first month or so of the season due to his injury. So that gave Wemby the time, right? And Wemby started this season tremendously and doing exactly what I thought the San Antonio Spurs were going to do. He was going to play MVP basketball, and they were going to be right there on his back, right? And that was awesome to see. Like, Wemby came out swinging this year, and I was like, yes, this is the Wemby that everybody was waiting for. But then, he went through the injury thing, and then, he's missing games, and then he's coming off the bench, and then the production, at least statistically, isn't what it is because of his minutes restriction, right? And then I think as that was happening, you had LeBron ascending, right? LeBron was chilling at first, and it was looking like, oh, I think this is his last year. He ain't really trying like that. LeBron averaging like 17 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. It's over, man. It's over. And then now all of a sudden, he's getting into form, right? LeBron has always done that. He goes in chill mode, and then as the season progresses to the more important parts, he goes crazy. And we've been seeing that. LeBron has been doing his thing. So I felt like they were a lot more even than we might want to admit. So again, me wanting to honor the OGs, I was like, look, LeBron should be an all-star starter. Again, like I said, when I was in high school, Kobe Bryant. Look at this. In 2013-14, Kobe Bryant played like 9 games or something like that because of his injury, and he was still, if I'm not mistaken, the leading vote getter that year. 2014-15, same thing. Played like 20, 30 something games that year. All-star starter. 2016, statistically, Kobe Bryant had no business being an all-star starter. He probably would have told you that from his own lips. But again, he announced his retirement, and the NBA honored him. And again, it's Kobe Bryant. Like, these are trailblazers of the game. These are the faces of the NBA, pillars of the NBA. And you mean to tell me LeBron James is not an all-star starter? I don't care. And I've said this with LeBron James and Stephen Curry specifically. I do not care if these dudes average 5 points in their final season. They should be starters in the All-Star game just for the commemoration of what they contributed to this game. Because we honor greatness, that's what it should be. So for me, like I said, that last spot went with LeBron for me. But this is where, this is where it gets interesting. Now, because we pretty much know that Nikola Jokic is going to miss the All-Star game, I was then like, okay, well, then you would just swap out Jokic and let Wemby replace him as a starter. So then, boom, everybody's happy. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Victor Wembanyama. Right now it's all good, right? Praying Jokic gets healthy and the Nuggets pick up where they left off. But hey, now we got LeBron and Wemby as starters. Or even for me personally, as I tease my West reserves here, I honestly thought that not even just Wemby, I thought that final spot could go to Kevin Durant. What he's been doing in Houston, again, an older player, honoring the greats, showing love to the greats. Or Anthony Edwards, another young star, absolutely doing his thing with the Timberwolves, 28 points a game, 5 rebounds, around 4 assists. Or even Kawhi Leonard, the way Kawhi has been hooping 28 points a game, career scoring year for him after the injuries. What a story that's been. So honestly, the West has a lot of options they can choose for that last starter spot with Joker being injured. Now, obviously, in what the NBA chose, Wemby's in there regardless. But again, you pretty much would like to, at least I would hope that final spot goes to LeBron James. If not, it better go to Anthony Edwards. And then if we're trying to honor older players, then do Kevin Durant, guys that have done this and been this, been at this for a long time and represented the NBA in a great way. Even Kawhi Leonard, if you want to show some love to him. But I just say all that to say, I went 9 of 10 this year. Not bad. I'll take it. 90% is great, but I was like, man, LeBron James is really not starting in an All-Star game. No matter after what he's contributed to this game, I still haven't yet wrapped my head around that at the time of this recording. But those are my Western Conference starters compared to what actually was. All right, of course, let me know if you have any thoughts on the All-Star starters yourself. I know there are some mixed opinions of the game in general, but again, for the fun of it and the history of the All-Star game, I would love to know your thoughts on the All-Star starters. Maybe you thought somebody was snubbed. Maybe you thought that maybe it shouldn't be positionless, right? Maybe you did think you also thought LeBron could be in the starting lineup, or maybe hey Des, you're tripping. It should be Wemby. Let these young guys show what they can do and really pass that torch. So let me know what you think. Definitely comment on the socials or comment under this video on whatever platform you're on. But as we transition to the East reserves, this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because it's more players and it tends to be a lot more snubs here. Again, if you're asking me, I think the East reserves are pretty easy. I didn't think it was all that hard. I'd be very surprised if they are not what I am about to say. But I will say this. There is something here that I have to get off my chest, okay? So as I start my East reserves, number 1, we got Jalen Johnson from the Atlanta Hawks. This brother absolutely deserved it last year. If you remember, I actually had him on my selections last year. I really thought he was going to make the team, but he ended up getting hurt, so it didn't work out that way. But he's really built on what he showed last year. If I'm correct, 23 points, around 10, 11 rebounds, 8 assists a game. Like, he is a triple-double threat night in and night out. He's been struggling a little bit after the Trae Young trade. I think he's been humbled in the sense of, all right, like, it's your team now, but again, you gonna miss Trae. You gonna miss the pressure that Trae drew, right? Running the team ain't as easy, or it ain't always, the grass ain't always as greener at first, right? You got to take some time to water that grass. And, they surrounded him with shooters, the necessary shooters, and he's really got underrated isolation game in the half court too. But again, like I said, I think teams are now game planning for him. Teams are able to take him away from the game and really force him to pass and force him to make tough shots. And again, that's just something that he's not used to. This all really came in the blink of an eye for him, I think. So, yeah, he's at a really interesting point in his career. But again, he's certainly on his way up. He's getting comparisons to Sean Marion and things of that nature. So, I think I would definitely give the edge defensively to Sean, to shout out Matrix, but Jalen Johnson's got the athleticism. He's got the game for the All-Star game, right? Like, open court transition, he thrives there. No-brainer selection there. Another no-brainer, Donovan Mitchell. Again, he is the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. Like, we know what Donovan Mitchell is going to bring night in and night out. And again, that's why I have so much respect for him as a player, because one thing about Donovan Mitchell, he's always going to give 110%. Even if that is him shooting 5 of 17 from the field and it's like 1 of 12 from 3. Because if you're going to get that, you got to be able to live with that if you want the 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, dunking on everybody, pull up threes, pull up over 2 hands. Like, it's incredible. It's incredible. Donovan Mitchell, again, I feel for this brother because he is at his peak. He's been playing great basketball. He always shows up, does his thing. I think underrated defensively. He's always been like an underrated defender in the passing lanes and things of that nature. He's just got the heart to I was really going to say the heart of a champion, but I know how people feel about that. You don't want to give away rings too soon, but Donovan Mitchell, he does have that. He's just got that kind of competitive nature that I grew up, seeing out of the NBA. So, his numbers are tremendous, and his production is literally why the Cavs are where they are. I know they've had an underwhelming season this year, but Donovan Mitchell has certainly done his thing. A lot of the Cavaliers' problems is due to health. On some nights, I would say it's rebounding, and yeah, that's the main thing. They should make some moves here and there. I know there are some trades that they can explore, but one thing is constant, man. I can't say it enough. Donovan Mitchell. All right. And now the brothers getting married. You know what I mean? So, hey, he even straight up said the other day, when I see my girl, shout out Coco Jones, when I see her in the crowd, I play a little better. So, hey, brother, we can tell. We can tell. No brainer. Next two names. This is what I want everybody to know. The Toronto Raptors should have both Brandon Ingram and Scottie Barnes representing the Eastern Conference All-Stars in their squad. I feel like this entire time, everybody has been playing this or that. Do you pick Scottie or do you pick Brandon? Do you pick Scottie because he has the all-around game and he impacts the game on both ends of the floor, Swiss Army knife, or do you get Brandon because he's the scorer? And I feel like Brandon has not gotten the campaign that he deserves because of Scottie Barnes' impact on both ends. But I'm telling you this, the Toronto Raptors are not top 5 in the East without Brandon Ingram. They would be decent with Scottie Barnes, but they needed Brandon Ingram. I've been vocal about this since the trade happened last year. As much as Scottie Barnes is beneficial for Brandon Ingram is just as beneficial to Scottie Barnes. And there have been a lot of games the Toronto Raptors would not be winning if it wasn't for the buckets that Brandon Ingram provided. They finally got their go-to scorer and are in the playoffs. And you mean to tell me they should only have one All-Star? And I want you to understand too. Even if it's just Scottie Barnes, I'm going to be upset. And if it's just Brandon Ingram, I'm going to be upset because these two dudes needed each other. And by the grace of God, they're staying relatively healthy. Again, that is why they are where they are in the East. I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you that they should only have one All-Star. Brandon Ingram, I know we have this weird relationship with bucket getters, right? Everybody acknowledges that basketball is the name of the game, and you have to be able to score to be effective in this league. But then when it comes to stuff like this, Brandon Ingram just scores. That's not true. He rebounds his position pretty well. He's a willing passer. He's had games where he's shown that, right? And so I want to make the case for both of these dudes. The Toronto Raptors should have two All-Stars represented, point blank, period. Brandon Ingram's, again, his numbers aren't crazy, but that's because of the team that they have. Right? They're really gelling. And again, like I said, I just really think that the Toronto Raptors would not be this good if it wasn't for Brandon Ingram. And, shout out Scottie Barnes, man. He certainly knows how to hold his own. You cannot sleep on Scottie Barnes offensively because the dopest thing about Scottie Barnes is that he knows how to play his role. But when it's time to score, he knows how to get to it. He's very similar to like a Miles Bridges or a Keldon Johnson, or sometimes I even want to say like a PJ Washington, somebody that scores a lot inside the arc. They get a lot of floaters and jump hooks and things of that nature. Might get a nice standstill pull up, or even stretch the floor with occasional threes. But they do a lot of damage inside the arc, and I really like that about Scottie Barnes, that he has a nice game that he can go to. Like that's pretty much where he gets a lot of his shots. But when you need him to score, just the other night versus the LA Clippers, like he's attacking Brook Lopez and Zubac, right? As the small ball center. He's just lulling them to sleep and then just shooting in their face. Like he knows how to get his buckets and he knows how to balance his role on that team. So yeah, I love the Raptors this year. I've been saying it all summer and everything like that. Love the Raptors and they should have two All-Stars by far. Like the bottom line, if you're going to pick one, you got to pick the other. Got to pick the other. And speaking of others, we got a couple others coming up. So I got Karl Anthony Towns joining his New York counterpart in Jalen Brunson. Again, this is interesting because there are some times I watch Cat. I won't lie. There's some times I watch him and I'm like, maybe that spot should go to somebody else. But at the same time, his numbers don't lie. He is putting up all-star numbers. And again, the Knicks are where they are because they have a great team. They have a great lead guard. And when Karl Anthony Towns is really in the zone, he is a all-star player. There is somebody that I'm looking at right now that could take his spot and somebody else's spot that I have written down. But for the time being, as of 2:06 Central Time, me recording this, Karl Anthony Towns is an all-star. Still stretching the floor. Again, I think last year was a lot more of a career year for him, especially like rebounding the basketball. But the Knicks are doing their thing, man. And again, Jalen Brunson, as much as he tries to do it himself, and as much as I believe he's capable of doing it, quote unquote, himself, he does benefit from guys like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and of course his sidekick, Karl Anthony Towns. And I think that's the thing too, right? Karl Anthony Towns is a really stinking good sidekick. You know, I think gone are the days where he is expected to be that number one guy like he was in Minnesota, right? But I think, again, this situation has allowed him to supplement Jalen Brunson with a inside-outside scorer who can carry his weight, right? It was a little while ago, but they played the Hawks, and Karl Anthony Towns went off. Him and Jalen Brunson looked every bit of the all-star players and the dynamic duo that we know they can be on a great night. So I think the Knicks, I think they deserve two all-stars. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA goes elsewhere here, but I do think they will lean towards winning ultimately and go with Cat. Same thing, right? Next guy, Jalen Duren. Again, Cade's counterpart. There was a little bit of a moment where I was like, I think the Jalen Duren All-Star campaign is kind of fizzling out, But again, the more I watch the Pistons, it's just like, and at the end of the day, this is a positionless format now, but you got to have your bigs, and especially guys like Jalen Duren who are old school bigs, lob threats, rebounding threats, strong interior presence. Again, he is a part of that Detroit basketball. The resurgence of Detroit basketball is not just Cade Cunningham. It's a lot of those gritty guys on their organically built roster. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Javonte Green. I love that the Pistons have always maintained that identity no matter what era of basketball we're in. And Jalen Duren represents that to a T. Grabs rebounds, crashes the glass, does the dirty work. And he's shined in that role. His points are up. His rebounds are right where they need to be at 11 a game. Like, this dude is a beast on the block, and it's good to see that be represented. And I think, again, especially if we're trying to get some size on the Eastern Conference roster, got to go Jalen Duren. Got to reward the big fella. And then lastly, the last spot, I think he snuck in there. I think his campaign definitely increased as the last month or so has progressed. And that guy is Michael Porter Jr. Started out with 23 points a game, and then you blinked and it went to like 25, 26. And I think it was that stretch right there which showed people like, okay, maybe this brother's ready for his first All-Star appearance. And again, I said it, I've said it before. The Brooklyn Nets, I felt like they were counting on him to show like, all right, you're a champion. We're a young team, but you're a champion. And we want you to apply that experience to our organization and to our basketball team and bring that on the floor, bring that in the locker room, right? And who knows how well that's going with the podcast and everything like that. I don't know, brother be wilding sometimes. But nonetheless, as far as his basketball ability, he's shown he can pass. He's shown that he's a willing passer. I think he still has to grow a little bit off the dribble, but he's knocking down threes. He's knocking down occasional middies. He's getting to the basket, and he's showing that, like, look, this is the player that I was drafted to be. And he showed that maturity to be in a situation in Denver and be on a contending team and play a role. And because he went through that seasoning, he's now ready to do that for a team, at least at the time being, in the Brooklyn Nets, who need a guy like that. And whether they decide to trade him or whatever, it's just been good to see Michael Porter Jr. thrive in this role and show people that, hey, like, I can play basketball. And that's not just conditioned to one role, and I can be a guy that a team counts on to be the main, the primary option on a night to night basis. So I think Michael Porter Jr. sneaks in there, man. I think he sneaks in there. So again, as far as my selections, it's Jalen Johnson, Donovan Mitchell, Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes, Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Duren, and Michael Porter Jr. But again, as far as my thing with the world team goes, the way my roster shapes up, I am one person short of that, as you'll see me get into my West reserves. So being that Adam Silver might have to add somebody, I think that person is going to be Pascal Siakam. Again, I know the Pacers aren't having the greatest season, but Pascal Siakam has been one of the few bright spots of this season for the Indiana Pacers. 23 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Pascal is always, again, he's been in that most underrated category the last few seasons now, and I think he absolutely deserves another All-Star nod to his name. He's balling out of his mind, again, trying to, and you can see it on his face, right? When the Pacers lose games, you can tell it just bothers Pascal because he's putting his heart and soul on the line to try to keep this team afloat, even without Tyrese Halliburton. You could just tell that this team thought they would be a little better. I know I thought they'd be better. I predicted them to be in the play-in conversation. I thought they could still find a way to be an 8th seed. But nonetheless, even with their struggles, Pascal's been doing his thing from mid-range, from the block. That's where he really specializes in. But that dude can get a bucket, man. That brother can get a bucket. So I think out of all the snubs, I would say Pascal Siakam is most deserving of somebody that might have a chance to get in. And of course, being from Cameroon, he's able to be eligible for the world roster. So we'll see if that happens. I think Pascal has the best chance out of everybody. I mean, if I go more into my snubs, shout out Josh Giddey. Injury, is going to prevent him from really being considered as an all-star, but I thought he had a great start to the season, averaging near triple-double, 19, 9, and 9, helped the Bulls get off to a hot start. I had to go with the homer pick. We got to reward a good basketball at the end of the day, baby. And, I think Josh Giddey was doing that. Got to show love to Norman Powell, my cousin Norm, no relation, you know how it go. There's not a lot of Desmonds and it's not a lot of Powells in the NBA. So they all family to me. But Norm Powell been doing his thing with the Heat. Very similar season to what he had last year with the Clippers. And to be honest, I think that's why he's probably not going to crack the All-Star roster. I'd be surprised if he does. And honestly, I'd be especially surprised if he gets in ahead of Brandon Ingram, because I think as Norman Powell has averaging more points than Brandon Ingram, I do think Brandon Ingram means more to the Raptors than what Norman means to the Heat. And the Heat just haven't got past that play-in spot. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to let him get in. Like I said, they might very well. Who knows? But I have him as a snub. I think he's a great player, great offensively, great spark plug. He really evolved from a spark plug and then found out how to be a spark plug as a starter. And now he's in the All-Star conversation. So I love it for him, but I just don't think he's as deserving as the guys that I have on this list. But incredible player, and it's great to see him in the All-Star conversations again. I think Paolo Banchero is going to be a snub. It's interesting. Like I said, he might get in because the Magic are actually in playoff contention. And even for me, right, like I was kind of hard on Paolo this year. I was one of those people that kind of understood, like, yo, he's a lot more Michael Beasley, Julius Randle than he is LeBron, like people thought he would be. But he's been balling lately. That brother's been balling. So, I think he's still at that, 20 points, 6, 7 rebounds, around 4 assists, something like that. That dude, he can hoop. He can hoop. He clearly he can hoop. But there was a moment there where you just were a little bit nervous of what he was doing on the basketball floor. But funny enough, Franz Wagner went down and this brother went crazy and started reminding people, playing with that chip on his shoulder, like, yo, I can ball. I can score in the mid-range. I can score in the half court. That's what I do. I may not be the best from 3, but I can score in the half court. I can get to the basket. I can get my teammates involved. I'm a willing passer. So he's been showing some all-star ball. I just don't think it's enough. Same thing with Joel Embiid. It's really great to even utter his name in this conversation, even though he hasn't played as many games as a lot of these guys. But the fact that he's been playing looking more like his all-star self is a great sign. Again, I think the games played is going to deter him from being on this roster. But again, I didn't even have him on my snubs until yesterday, actually. So yeah, I think it's really cool to see Joel after what he's been through, hooping, having fun again, and looking closer to his MVP self. Not all the way there, but by the game, it's like he's getting closer and closer. So yeah, he might be he's more of a like under the radar snub. Like he's like a snub, if that makes sense. If that makes any sense. But yeah, those are my East reserves. Usually this is the part where I really go, I know this is not going to be, I know I'm not going to go 7 for 7 here. So, we'll see what the NBA decides to do, but those are my reserves. But going for the Western Conference again is interesting because there are a lot of I say this every year, somebody is not going to be happy. All right, so let's get right into it. Of course, we got Kevin Durant, Slim Reaper, easy money sniper, Durantula, whatever you want to call him. That's what he still is, even as he's getting older. And what I love about Kevin Durant is the minute he made that transition to Houston, I said it. This is the most unique situation he's been in since he's been in OKC. And yeah, he had some moments in Brooklyn where he was playing with like Goran Dragic, Jeff Green, an older Blake Griffin, and like I'm trying to think of who else was on that team, but it was like he was like the only star because Kyrie was out or James was out, James Harden. So he really had to carry. But since leaving the OKC Thunder, when you look at what he's done with the Golden State Warriors, the Phoenix Suns, and what Brooklyn was supposed to be, he's played with a lot of other talent, and it just helped him find his way within the offense and get and do what he does best: score, facilitate, be a great last line defender. But now he's in a situation again where they need him to score, and we've seen it already. And I think we've seen KD's frustration a few times too, where now he's got a little bit more of that responsibility that he had in OKC, where everybody's looking at you to do something. Even in your mid to late 30s, your team is looking at you to close games. Your team is looking at you when Sengun is in foul trouble or when he's out of the game entirely, right? They had the ugly moment the other game where he went to the bench after scoring a bunch of points. They were up by like 13 or something crazy like that, and then the lead just evaporated the minute he went off the floor, and they lost that game. I believe it was against the Portland Trailblazers. Like, Kevin Durant has had a load of responsibility that he hasn't had in a while, but the positive side of it is that he's been thriving. Still a 25, 26 point per game scorer. The rebounds and assists are still at a decent level. And he, again, Kevin Durant is a scorer, and he's still scoring with the best of them. So it's a no-brainer. And again, as an older star in this league, like, you got to show love. I said it before, Anthony Edwards, doing his thing with the Timberwolves, still dunking on folks, just had his career high night, 55 points. Every bit of the star that again, reminds me so much of the era of basketball that I grew up with. Exciting, always going to get a good soundbite, high flyer, excellent scorer, great leader. He's made for this game, and hopefully, he can have a really good game this year and actually put some effort in there. I want to see Ant get like a MVP one of these years. He be chilling, but I want to see him do it because again, he reminds me so much of the era that I grew up with. But he's been out of his mind. Kawhi Leonard, out of his mind. How much of a blessing it's been for him to have the season that he's having with all the knee surgeries and the moments where you looked at him and it just didn't look like he'd be the same. But I mean, man, he's been going off. Mid-range as lethal as ever. Defense is still there, averaging over 2 steals a game. Like, Kawhi Leonard is showing folks like, I am still very much that guy, and that's really scary. It also is a testament to the advancements in medicine and things of that nature, and surgeries and whatnot. But man, Kawhi Leonard's persistence alone is an NBA All-Star. So for him to be playing this way now and career highs at 34 years old after what he's been through, no brainer, man, no brainer. Of course, I hope this next spot would be LeBron, right? On my list, it was Victor Wembanyama, but given the circumstances, I hope this one would be LeBron James. Like I said, slower start to the season, but he's looking every bit of the Father Time's best opponent right now, man. He's getting those 30 points, 20 points, near triple doubles, dunking, alley-oops, facilitating. LeBron is still very much a amazing basketball player, even at the age of 88 years old. He is absolutely doing his thing, man. He is absolutely doing his thing. I mean, like, I don't need to go on anymore. LeBron James, I would, to me, definitely deserves to be on the All-Star team. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. It's not the first half of the West. It's the second half of the West where it gets interesting. All right? Now, this next guy, Deni Avdija. Shout out Deni, man. Deni has been doing an excellent job leading the Portland Trail Blazers, and quite frankly, has a little bit more of that Luka Doncic game to him. I know he's getting a lot of Luka comparisons, but he has a lot of that I didn't think he had. And I think a lot of fans feel that way. You know, I remember when he was in Washington, and I was like, yo, this is a nice, guy that can guard multiple positions. He's an intense defender. Like, he might be a little Draymond Green. That, like, quick story. I don't know if I told this before, but in NBA 2K23, I'm an avid My Career player. I like to play realistically the whole nine. In 2K23, I was on the Blazers, and it got to a point where I was like, man, this is fun, but like, this team is really small. And I'm like, especially with Dame Lillard, I was like, man, we need a Draymond or like a Ben Simmons that would be perfect for this team. Somebody that can facilitate, help Dame out, allow Dame to play a little bit more off ball, facilitate, orchestrate, and play defense. Be a 6'8" bigger wing that can guard a Jason Tatum, that can guard a LeBron James, that can guard a Luka Doncic, that can guard a Kevin Durant. And I remember like looking at real life highlights, and I'm looking at the roster in the 2K, and I'm like, Deni Avdija would be decent with the Blazers. Like, that's the person I need. And unfortunately, I could never find a way to get him on my career team. No matter how many times I did the trade request or the offseason thing or what have you, they would not let me get Deni Avdija because he was on a stinking team option, and the Wizards kept resigning him, so I could never get him. But funny enough, it was like the season after that, he gets traded to the Portland Trail Blazers, and he's playing the best basketball of his career. It's that 2K prophecy meets ball knower. I know I'm not the only one that has went through that before, but again, I did not know he had that scoring streak in him. And again, a lot of people are going to look at me and be like, oh, well, Des, he just draws fouls. It's easy to get 25 points a game when he's just bulldozing his way through the lane. Yeah, that's how you're supposed to get to the free throw line. Like, I see a lot of people critiquing Deni because of that. And I get it. Sometimes it's like, it feels like when a guy's just flailing at you, like, how is that on me? He came at me first. But the thing about Deni Avdija, he's aggressive. He is a bulldozer. He is going to attack the paint until you show weakness. Until you surrender, he is going to attack the paint. And that's why he gets to the free throw line the way he does. That's basketball 101. Quite frankly, that is 2000s basketball. It's nothing new. So I love what I'm seeing from him. He has, I think, slacked just a little bit on defense, just in favor of what he's doing on offense. But again, emerging as a scorer, somebody who can, I've seen him score in the mid-range. He can score from beyond the arc. But again, a lot of that damage is inside the arc and getting to the free throw line. But, with like 25, 7 and 7 averages, things of that nature, he's been excellent for that team. And I'm really excited to see what they look like next year, with a healthy Dame and what they can continue to do with those young guys. Like, they finally have a roster that should have been built around Damian Lillard. So I can't wait for that. And Deni is a great piece for this team. And, I would like to think he is the next Blazer. I was going to say legend. I know that's hefty right now, but I would love that for him. I would love for him to be the next great Portland Trail Blazer, as with Damian Lillard getting older. Then this next guy is very interesting because I think some people are, because of the team he plays on, a lot of people don't think he should be here. But I think it is an absolute travesty if we don't get Lauri Markkanen in the 2026 All-Star game. Averaging about 27, 28 points a game the entire year. He was another guy that had a crazy start to the year because he had a heck of a Eurobasket run this summer. Let's not forget. 3-level scorer. The actions that that Will Hardy and the Jazz run for him get him in his spots. He's automatic at 7 feet. Like I said, great shooting touch for his size. Clutch. Like, that dude can absolutely score the basketball. He rebounds well. Like, I know he's got Dirk comparisons, just I think the way he's able to use his body in the inside and, have that shooting touch as a taller, like a 7-footer. But Larry Markkinen is an all-star to me. I'm sorry. There are some snubs out west that are not going to be happy. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. But Larry Markkinen, man, I think it's an absolute shame, especially because again, he can play the 4 or the 5, and you want to have some. You don't just want a bunch of guards. Like you got to get some big man out here, and I think Larry Markkinen should be that guy. I think he's more than deserving. More than deserving. The next guy, Jamal Murray. If you tuned into Mid Range Monday on Substack, I showed love to Jamal Murray because I absolutely have him as an all-star. For him to not, the biggest question with Jamal Murray was he going to be able to keep the Nuggets afloat while Nikola Jokic has been out? And while Jamal Murray has missed his games, when he does play, he has absolutely delivered. And for him to already finally have an all-star season, 25 points a game, 6, 7 assists, whatever it is, career highs, like he's finally been playing that regular season basketball we know he can play. And for that reason alone, I think he deserves to be on this roster. He's great. Again, great footwork, great quick twitch, great step back, 3-level scorer, can finish with the best of them, can shoot the midi, can close games, shoot the 3. He's had some incredible scoring performances this year already. Like this dude is an all-star. It screams all-star. If he doesn't get in, it's literally going to be because of somebody else, whatever the NBA decides. And I honestly feel the same way about this next guy because the last spot that I gave was to James Harden. And it was not like that at first. It was not like that at first. At first, I had Devin Booker. And then Devin Booker, I think he trailed off a little bit. He had a hot start to the year, but then he trailed off because, again, there were some injuries here and there. But I also think he was getting double teamed. He was getting trapped. And teams were forcing him to take, he as a mid-range scorer, he takes a lot of contested shots, and they don't always go his way. He's amazing from mid-range. But again, because of the defenses that he sees a lot of times, he's forced to kick it out or he's forced to take a tougher shot, and they don't always fall. So I think he kind of trailed off a little bit, if I'm being honest. So then I went with Alperen Sengun. But then I looked at Sengun and I'm like, he's doing really well, but is it as good as James Harden? Because I think even James Harden's campaign went low a little bit. And it just made this weird environment where it's like all these guys are deserving, but who's going to get that last spot? And again, now I see the reason that I have Lauri Markkanen in this, by the way, is because I see him as Nikola Jokic's replacement, right? Victor Wembanyama should replace, or at least on my selection, I anticipated Victor Wembanyama would replace Jokic in the starting lineup, but Lauri Markkanen would replace him, his spot on the roster in its entirety. So I'm looking at that final spot and I'm like, James Harden's doing his thing, 25 points, 8 assists. Devin Booker's getting 25 points, 6, 7 assists. Alperen Sengun, 21, 11, and 6. And I think all these guys are deserving, but the reason why I gave it to James Harden is just because I think he's been a little bit more consistent than Devin Booker, despite his team being worse. But when the Clippers need James Harden the most, aka when Kawhi Leonard is out, James Harden is every bit of the James Harden we know and love. So again, I think I gave a little bit of that guard bias because of the positionless system this year. But I do think that James Harden deserves that last spot. But I wouldn't be mad at Devin Booker, and I certainly wouldn't be mad at Alperen Sengun, because Alperen Sengun is probably my favorite big man in the league, not named Jokic or Embiid or Giannis or whoever. But like I really like Sengun because he'll throw up a weird mid-range shot every now and then, but for the most part, he don't play with his food. He attacked Wemby on multiple possessions in that NBA Cup game in San Antonio. I remember watching that game. It was on Prime. And Alperen Sengun did what you were supposed to do. He attacked Wemby's body. He backed him down like Charles Barkley and finished at the cup on multiple occasions. He doesn't shy away, and he sticks to his fundamentals, and he gets his teammates involved. He's a great, like, I love his competitive spirit. Like, I love me some Albie. I love me some Sengun. But the only reason I see him getting in, quite honestly, is if Adam Silver picks him for the world thing. Now, granted, they might give them some big man depth, and he'll be right in there. But like I said, between James Harden, Sengun, Devin Booker, and even like Harden, Murray, maybe even Markkanen, all these guys, everybody can't make it and somebody ain't going to be happy. But the way I see it, if I'm just giving my review, it would be Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James / Victor Wembanyama, Denny Avdia, Jamal Murray, James Harden, and then Lauri Markkanen replacing Jokic on the team, or possibly Sengun. But other snubs include Austin Reeves, right? Another guy, much like Josh Giddey. It's the injuries and things of that nature that caught up to him. But this is a guy that was playing out of his mind. I mean, like, I felt like nobody wants to take Austin Reeves seriously because he's like, he tends to take off the Superman cape, he tends to put on the Superman cape when LeBron and or Luka are out. But like this year, I felt like he was really showing like, yo, it's me and Luka, and LeBron is like the facilitator. And yeah, I'm a 27 point per game scorer. I do this. Like, I draw fouls. I can get to the basket. I can shoot the three. I thought Austin Reeves, this was definitely his all-star year, and hopefully he can return to that level when he comes back, because again, I think he's the real deal and people aren't giving him enough credit. Like I said, Devin Booker had a great start to the year, trailed off a little bit. Hard for me to, it's going to be real tight with him and those other guards. Same thing with Keontae George. Again, great, having a great campaign, but I just don't think he has the hype that these other guys have. 23 points a game, 5-6 assists a game, great player, clutch. He's had some clutch moments this year, hit some big shots for the Utah Jazz, is a bright spot. Like I said, I know they've been in trade rumors, but honestly, if I'm the Utah Jazz, I'm keeping Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen, because that's a great duo right there. If you can develop everybody else, the Utah Jazz might be coming. They might be coming. But yeah, Keontae George, excellent year. I just don't think, as amazing as it is, it's just not enough for this Western Conference. And then I think even Julius Randle, right? Nobody's talking about Julius Randle averaging 25, 7, and 5 on a Timberwolves team that just continues to be contenders, right? Him and Anthony Edwards are 1A, 1B, right? Like they are a great duo, and Julius Randle has played some of his better basketball with the Minnesota Timberwolves, or I should say his smartest basketball with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think it's continued this season. He has his moments, but again, I think a lot like how I feel about Paolo and even Scottie Barnes to a certain degree, at the end of the day, he knows his role. When Ant's killing, he takes the back seat. But when they need buckets, he knows how to thrive in the mid post, in the mid range, shoot the three, get to the basket. Julius Randle's having a really good year as well. But again, I just don't think it's to the level of these guys that I've named. So regardless of how it's been perceived the last few years, the NBA All-Star Game remains one of the most exciting events of the season, and it will be very interesting to see which players find their names as a part of the 24 best players in the league. All right, these are my thoughts. These are my teams. Let me know what you think. But as always, it's time to hear from you. You can tweet the show at @HipToTheGames or tag me directly on Twitter and IG at @DesmondPowell_ to share your thoughts on all the All-Star selections, any predictions, thoughts, questions, as I would love to know what you think as well and what your selections might be. And of course, I want to simply say thank you for listening to another episode of Hip to the Games, all for the love of the best combo there is. And here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at DesmondPowell_ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.